Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Shift of Shadows. Episode 3. I picked a DVD, holding up the case. She nodded enthusiastically, so I popped it in the player and joined her on the couch. Grabbing the blanket off the back, I threw it over us. I'd left the lights off, so the only light in the room came from the TV. About half an hour into the movie, I felt Violet snickering beside me. What? No matter how many times I watch this movie, this part always gets me. She gestured towards the screen. This chick is the definition of stupid. Half of her friends are already dead, and her brilliant idea is to hide in a closet? Because that's not obvious. She giggled. There's always one dumb girl in a horror movie. And she always seems to fall down a lot too. And why is she always thin and blonde? I shrugged. Appeal. She's only until her heads get chopped off. She laughed. I'm glad I'm smarter than that. Where would you hide? Hide? If someone was killing my friends in a house, I'd leave the house. Now I laughed. She was something else. We settled back in, occasionally making fun of the idiocy of the people on screen and commenting on how fake the gore was. Violet picked the next movie, another classic horror, but this time, she snuggled into my side as we watched. I was still shirtless, and her cheek created tiny sparks and tingles where it touched my skin. I draped my arm over her, completely happy inside. We talked a lot, eventually forgetting the movie completely. It sounds corny, but I wanted to know everything about her, everything I didn't know already. Her favorite color was green, her favorite type of music was old rock and roll, her favorite foods and ice cream flavors, and where she liked to spend her time when she wasn't at home or with friends. After 2 hours of asking each questions and laughing together, I felt closer to her than ever. So? Yes. She took a sip of her soda, looking at me sideways. Eno says you a midnight wolf. Her eyes cast down and she nodded. Yeah, I guess so. What is that, exactly? She tucked her hair behind her ears, suddenly looking self-conscious. I'm not sure. Hala says we're the first. Ever. Yeah, Eno said that too. She bit her lip, still not looking at me. Then she spoke. I don't get it. Why me? Why not Garrett? What do you mean? Like I told Hala, it should have been my brother. I'm not the one who's taking over the pack, I'm nothing special. So why give me this gift? A little bit of anger spread through my chest. She thought she wasn't special? I vocalized my question and she blinked at me, finally meeting my eyes. I'm the troublemaker. I sneak out, go to parties, get in fights. Goddess knows I'm always up to something behind my parents' back. If you have alpha blood, that would make me a Luna, but so what? I was never born to be the leader, any type of leader. Garrett was trained for that, not me. I sat up, taking her face in my hands gently. I made sure she was looking into my eyes before I spoke, really wanting her to listen. Violet. Her name rolled off my tongue a bit harshly. Don't say that about yourself. But it's not true. Yes, you get into trouble. Yes, you get into fights. But none of that makes you unworthy of what you were given. You know what I see? I see someone who stands up for what she believes in. You have never been in, or started, a fight that wasn't worth fighting. As for the rest, it's called being a teenager. Nobody is going to look down on you because you climbed out your bedroom window a few times to go to a party. I smirked. But most importantly, you're doubting yourself as a leader? Come on. I've seen you step in and take charge a million times while your brother sat on the sidelines. I'm not saying he won't make a good alpha, I'm sure he will. But you? I shook my head. You never needed to be trained for something you have inside you. People look up to you, they admire you. They admire your strength, and your intelligence. So no more putting yourself down. The goddess knows what she's doing. And I believe she chose you because of you are on the inside, an amazing, special, intelligent, beautiful person with a good heart and even better soul. Her eyes were misty when I finished speaking, my thumbs caressing her cheeks lightly. She sniffed a little, opening her mouth, but no words came out. Never had I seen her speechless, but it was cute to watch. Finally, she nodded, a tiny smile forming. Thank you, she whispered. I kissed her forehead. Anytime. She pulled my face down, connecting her lips to mine. And just like before, a jolt went through me, like a bolt of electricity. I never thought the mate bond could be so intense. Her hands were in my hair, pulling me closer to deepen the kiss, and I happily obliged. Somehow, we ended up with Violet lying on THR couch and me hovering above her. The feel of her under me was driving me insane, and it wasn't as easy to hide my erection this way. It wasn't like I could help it, but I didn't want her to feel uncomfortable or think I was moving too fast. So I gave her one more deep kiss before pulling away and sitting up. Her face dropped into a pout. Don't give me that look, Missy. There's only so much I can handle when it comes to you. I pulled the blanket over my lap and her cheeks turned pink as she understood. She looked at me for a minute before looking down, playing with her fingers. Can we, talk about that? That? Well. Mom says if you can't talk about X, then you shouldn't be having it. She glanced up at me. I raised a brow. Fair enough. She took a deep breath. I'll be honest with you. I'm not ready yet. That's okay. And it's because I'm a little scared. I leaned one arm on the back of the sofa, my cheek pressed against my palm. What are you scared about, Vi? She blushed deeply now, her whole face turning red. It was amazing how well I could see in the dark now. Before my shift I probably wouldn't have noticed as much. You have experience. I don't. I'm scared I'm not going to be good for you, that you won't like it with me. She rushed through the sentence, my mind replaying in slow motion to understand what she said. I almost laughed, but I was positive she would get angry if I did. Instead, I also took a deep breath, thinking through my words. I know you're expecting me to say this, but I'm going to say it anyways. You don't need to worry about that, now or ever, Vi. And if you think about it, this is kind of my first time too, because it's with you, my mate. Anyone else, they meant nothing to me. Then, and now. If you want the truth. Now it was my turn to blush. I only ever slept with anyone else because I couldn't have you. Good goddess, that sounded bad. To my surprise, she didn't get angry. You liked me? I mean, before you knew I was your mate. Violet, I've liked you since you punched that kid for making fun of me in school. Her eyes widened, her hands covering her mouth. You remember that? She squeaked. I laughed. How could I forget? You were badass. I took her hand in mine, smiling. Does that make you feel better? She nodded. It does actually. Good. It wasn't like I didn't want her, obviously, I just wanted to move at her pace. I never expected she would jump into bed with me right away, regardless of the bond. When it happened, it'd be worth waiting for, because it was her. Garrett's POV Hugo was relentless. He kept whining, nagging me to go to our mate and telling me to stop being such a brat. Even my wolf was against me. Finally, after hours and hours of his insistent complaining, I went to find her. She wasn't hard to find, even when I wasn't following the pull of our bond, I knew the most likely spots she would be. And just like I thought, I found her sitting on her favorite bench in the park nearby, a book in her hands. I took a minute to just look at her. She was as beautiful as ever, even if seeing her stirred mixed emotions inside me. As if she could feel my presence, her head lifted and turned, our eyes connecting. Hers wide with surprise, but I kept mine neutral. Garrett. Her voice drifted to me. I walked the remaining distance, sitting next to her the bench. Looking over the park, I noticed for the first time it was rather busy. Parents had brought their kids out to play in the nice weather, swinging and sliding and generally having a great time. The atmosphere of laughter and happiness contrasted hugely to the wave of angst inside of me. "What are you doing here?" Sophia asked softly. "I came to find you," I answered bluntly. "Oh." She put a bookmark in her book, closing it and placing it on her lap. "You know we need to talk," I stated. "Yet," I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. So many things I wanted to say, I was afraid they would all come out at once, and honestly, some of them weren't nice. Sophia sat quietly, waiting. Finally, after I felt I had composed myself enough, I looked at her. "Why?" I asked. Her shoulders hunched a little, head bowing lower. "I don't know," she mumbled. "Don't," I snapped. She looked at me. "You had a reason. It's tortured me for a long time, the fact that you never told me why. I'm asking now, and I want an honest answer. Why did you cheat on me? Why did you destroy what we had?" Tears brimmed her eyes, her long lashes fluttering as she tried not to cry openly. "Because I didn't want to disappoint you. I thought if I had some experience, you would be satisfied with me when finally." She trailed off, her eyes once again on her book. I blinked at her, almost spastically. "Are you telling me you slept with him because you didn't want to disappoint me in bed?" I whispered. She nodded, her cheeks turning red, her hair falling over her shoulder to hide her face. "That's..." I was stumbling. "Stupid? Pathetic? Dumb?" I settled on. "I know. Do you? We could have shared that experience together, Sophia. Wasn't that the point? To make love with the person you actually love." "I'm sorry. Looking back now, I don't know what I was thinking. It was stupid, and selfish. I should have owned up to you, told you how I was feeling. Yet, you should have." I got up, too angry to sit there anymore. In my head, Hugo begged to go back to her, but I pushed him aside. I didn't want to talk to her anymore. But Sophia came after me, grabbing my hand. "Garrett, wait!" she pleaded. "Are you going to reject me?" "I don't know," I said. Her hand slid out of mine. "Stop that!" she snapped. I turned at the sound of her voice, incredulous to see her so angry. What right did she have to be angry? "Excuse me." Sophia crossed her arms. "Stop doing this to me. I get that you want me to hurt, but this is wrong. You're not just hurting me, but you're hurting my wolf too. And yours. I rolled my eyes. I'm not vindictive like you, Sophia. Pain flashed in her eyes, but she kept going. Really? I heard what you did to your sister. That's not your business. I snapped. Either reject me, or accept me, Garrett. I'm serious. This purgatory you're leaving me in is cruel. I haven't shifted yet, so our bond isn't so strong, but my wolf wants her mate, and she's hurting badly over it. I won't let you string me along for days, weeks, months, only to reject us in the end. Just get it over with. I took a step back, shocked that she thought I would do that to her. Didn't she understand the effect this had on me? I needed time to think. But how long will you take? She's right, this is painful, for everyone. Hugo whined. You haven't even asked my wolf's name. Continued Sophia. And I don't know yours. If you don't want me as a mate, I get it. I understand, but maybe we can both find chosen mates, or even a second chance mate, and move on. And be happy. Please, Garrett. She was crying now, silent tears running down her cheeks steadily. Is that what you want? I rasped. To be with someone else. Sophia scrunched her eyes tight, something she did when she was really upset. No. Of course I want to be with you. But it's clear that you can't decide if you want to be with me, to move past what happened in the past, and try to be happy. You expect me to forget about it so easily. I hissed. I never said that. I know you won't forget, but you're not even trying to forgive either. Look at what happened with Violet. The Garrett I know would never have tried to come between his sister and her mate. You're letting this hatred consume you. Because of what you did, Sophia. You expect me to be okay, to accept you, but do you even realize what you did? You took everything we had, and threw it in my face. I'm sorry. She cried. I know what I did. And I know it hurt you. But I don't regret that as much as I regret what it did to you. You have no idea what it did to me. I growled. She waved her hand at me, isn't you, Garrett? What I regret the most is taking someone so beautiful, and with my actions, turning him into this. She shook her head, tears falling on the ground. Please, just reject me. She sobbed. I flinched at the plea in her voice. She really wanted me to, she really wanted to end this, whatever it was. Heartbreak? It felt like it. I couldn't bring myself to answer, let alone form the words of rejection. Another sob broke from her chest and my heart hammered painfully in my chest. What was I doing? She turned away, running back to the bench and scooping up her belongings. And then she left. I stood, rooted in place, for a very long time. By the time I came back to reality, it was getting dark, and everyone had already gone home. I reflected on the last couple of weeks, on how angry I'd been. Not just with her, but with everyone. The confrontation with Vi and Jasper played through my mind, and shame engulfed me. Turning on my heel, I walked as fast as I could back to the pack house. There was only one person I wanted to see right now, one person I knew wouldn't betray me. The trip back home was blurry, but I was more focused as I climbed the stairs, getting to our floor. I ran down the hall, and knocked on his door roughly. Come in. Dad had barely spoken the words before I was inside his office, closing the door and turning to face him. He was on his feet instantly. Garrett? What's the matter? What happened? Sophia. My breath was coming hard, my mind whirling. Dad's expression turned to one of sympathy. He made me sit in the chair opposite his, getting me a glass of water. I chugged the whole thing, the cold burning my throat. You rejected her? He asked quietly, taking the glass from me and setting it on his desk. I shook my head. No. Then what's wrong? I was on my feet, pacing. I don't know what to do. I yelled. Okay, okay. Calm down, breath son. Talk to me. I told him everything. Everything including what I did to Violet. The words tore from my gut, and when I finished I passed onto the sofa set against the wall. My face felt wet, when had I started crying? Dad stared at me for a while, his face expressionless. Part of me thought he was going to yell at me. The other part of me hoped he would just tell me what to do, because I still didn't know. Finally, Dad sighed. Well, that's a mess. I scrutinized his face again. You already knew? Yes. Your mom told me. Mom knows. You're surprised. I wasn't really. Mom knew more about the going-ons in the pack than Dad did sometimes. Especially when it came to us. Dad pulled the chair up, sitting in front of me. He rested his elbows on his knees, regarding me with a thoughtful face. You love her still. Don't you? I clenched my jaw. She cheated on me. That's not what I asked. Yes. He nodded. You want my advice? Please. It's a tricky situation, because Jasper is your sister's mate. And whether you like it or not, she's accepted him. Now, I won't claim to understand why Sophia did what she did, or her reason for it. The one thing I will never understand is women. He smiled. But it truly sounds like she regrets it. And I don't think she ever meant to hurt you the way she did Garrett. Kids are stupid, they all do stupid stuff. You guys did. I opened my mouth, but he held up his hand, silencing me. I know, not that bad. But still. Regardless of what she did, she was still chosen to be your mate. And I'm sorry, but she is right, you can't string her along like this, you need to make a decision. However, I'm guessing that you've already made your decision, and you just haven't accepted it yet. I looked at the ground, breathing deeply. I want her, Dad. I want her to be my mate, my wife. To have pups someday. To have a family with her. But I can't stand the thought of her around him. And he's going to be around. Jealousy is an ugly thing. Sometimes it takes control of us, makes us do things we wouldn't do otherwise. Sometimes, it turns us into monsters. He leaned in, placing a hand on my shoulder. You are the next alpha. You need to decide what kind of alpha you're going to be. I won't lie to you, I was a monster myself once. It's not something I'd like to ever return to, and it would break my heart to watch you go down that path. I blinked away a few more tears. Are you saying this because it's what's best for the pack? I'm saying it because you're my son. This conversation would be the same whether you were an alpha, beta, or a rogue. You're my son, and I love you. I want what's best for you, what's going to make you happy. My guts untwisted, my breathing easier. It felt like the hate I'd been clinging onto was physically leaving my body. I felt lighter. Dad nodded at me, seeing on my face that I'd made my choice. I gave him a hug, mumbling a thank you. He shooed me out of his office after that, and once again, I was running. I flew down the stairs, and through the foyer. A maid ditched out of my way, shooting me a dirty look as she almost got knocked over. I didn't even bother to close the door as I ran out of the pack house. In the woods, I stripped and shifted quickly. Hugo was practically dancing on his feet, he was so excited. He took off, winding around trees and leaping over bushes. A herd of deer ran by, terrified of the monstrous wolf moving through the dark. But he paid no mind to them, racing towards the west side of the pack in record time. A few minutes later, we stopped and I shifted back, getting dressed. Jogging to the edge of the forest, I looked up at Sophia's house. Memories flashed in my mind of when we used to hang out here. Her house was small, the siding painted a fading yellow. She always used to complain about it, saying how much she hated yellow. I smiled, looking at it now. Not giving myself time to turn back, or second-guess myself, I walked out of the trees and straight to the back door. Sophia's parents worked nights, which was good tonight, as I didn't want an audience. Rapping on the door, I waited anxiously, bouncing from foot to foot. Was she home? Did she me? Was she not going to answer the door? I looked up as the door swung open. Sophia stared at me, surprised. Then her face clouded over, her arms coming up to hug herself. "What do you want, Garrett?" she asked. I answered by closing the distance between us. Cupping her face gently, the last thing I saw before I kissed her was her wide eyes. She didn't respond for a second, possibly too shocked. Then she was kissing me back, throwing her arms around me. Joy flooded through me, I wasn't letting her go, not again. We would get through this, somehow. For now, I was happy just to have her in my arms again. I pulled back, grinning at the dazed look on her face. My wolf's name is Hugo. Violet's POV. We ended sleeping together in the bed. Just sleeping. But I did feel a lot better, thanks to Jasper. He also got me thinking, what exactly was I? A midnight wolf, but what did that mean? Hala wasn't giving me answers, but only because she didn't know. It was frustrating. Why couldn't the goddess just call me up to her realm and explain things? Or was that treatment only reserved for my mom? I'd always been fascinated when Mom recalled her visits with the goddess. Now all I felt was slightly annoyed. Some time later, I fell asleep, still grumbling to myself. When I opened my eyes, I was in a meadow filled with tall grass, blowing gently in a warm breeze. I shielded my eyes, the glaring sun was too bright compared to the cozy confines of the cabin. I blinked, suddenly anxious. Wait, where was the cabin? How did I end up here? Jasper! I called. My voice echoed around me, but nobody replied. Slowly, I stood, taking in my surroundings. There wasn't much actually, just a lot of grass and an incredibly blue sky, free of clouds. I looked down, noticing my feet were bare. What shocked me more was the pure white dress I had on. My breathing started to accelerate, and I started to get dizzy. Had I died? You are far from dead, Violet. I spun, searching for the voice. There was nobody. Who's there? I tried to sound brave, but my voice came out breathy. Then I saw it. A small orb was floating towards me, just above the tips of the grass. It was white, like a void, but still had substance. It was beautiful, and scary. As it drifted closer, it reformed, wiggling and stretching, taking shape. I watched as the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen or imagined suddenly stood in front of me. Her hair was long, and black. So black, the complete opposite to the orb she just was. Her eyes were hypnotic, her skin creamy, yet ghostly white. She smiled a kind smile at me, and my brain stuttered over what I knew to be true, yet couldn't accept. Goddess? You're the moon goddess? I whispered. Yes. You may call me Celeste. Her voice washed over me, filling me with a sense of peace. I looked around again. Why am I here? I asked her. Because you asked to come here. I did. She laughed, and I gaped. The sound was like music. Not in so many words. But I got the hint. She waved her hand, and a simple wood table and chairs appeared. Trying to be discreet, I pinched my arm. Twice. Celeste looked at me with amusement while I decided that perhaps, maybe, I wasn't actually dreaming. Would you like to sit? I believe we have some things to discuss. She said politely. Dazed, I sat in one of the chairs, peering at her as she took the seat across from me. Everything she did was beyond graceful. I was in pure awe. I believe you have some questions for me. Celeste asked. I blinked. I was here because of that? Immediately, apologies starting tumbling out of my mouth. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean, you didn't have to bring me here. I didn't mean to sound like a child, I was just curious. Celeste laughed her musical laugh, her head thrown back. My jaw opened and closed like a fish. You worry too much, Violet. I am more than happy to be here with you and talk. You are one of my children, after all. She smiled sweetly. Gulping, I sat back and tried to organize my thoughts. When I looked back, there were cups on the table, filled with tea. The smell of orange hit my nose, reminding me of Jasper's scent. Orange pekoe tea was my favorite. I guess I shouldn't be surprised she knew that. Adding some sugar and cream, I stirred and then set my spoon down. I took a sip, it was better than any tea I'd ever had. I savored the taste for a minute before placing my cup down. Celeste was sipping away at her own drink, waiting patiently. I guess I just want to know, why me? It's the one thing I keep asking myself. I said somewhat nervously. I was basically questioning her choices. Maybe that wasn't okay. Would she smite me? You are your mother's daughter. She chuckled. You need not be afraid of me, child. I would never do anything to hurt you. My eyes widened. Can you read my thoughts? I can, but I don't. And I didn't. They are clear as day on your face. My face went tomato red. As to your question. Celeste set her cup down. I do believe your maid explained it very well. You do not see yourself very clearly, dear. But I know that you are strong, capable, smart. You were the perfect choice for my gift. But why did you make a new wolf? I asked, curious. Her expression faltered, her smile slipping. There is danger coming. To you, and your pack, but most specifically, your family. I am afraid your mother's wolf won't be able to handle it on her own. She sighed. What danger? How serious was this threat that the goddess herself felt the need to make a new breed of wolf? An old threat. Old, but it has grown strong. This is something you and your parents should speak about. Okay. How strong is this threat exactly? And what can I do about it? Very strong. Guided by hate and jealousy, a true monster of rage. The time will come when you will know what to do. Hala will help you. She is special. She's a reborn wolf, right? Yes. Her former life was tragic, and her human treated her without mercy or care. I know she will be happier with you. She she can't remember that, can she? No. As well as your brother, and her new breed, I have also given her the gift of completely starting over. She knows she is reborn, but it is better she does not remember anything. I nodded. At least there was that. I would hate for Hala to suffer in any way. Can I ask you something? I asked after a minute of silence. Of course. Why is Garrett red? Alphas are usually black. Just like you, your brother is special to me. He is still an alpha, as long as he continues down the right path. He is meant to do great things. He will see in time. I nodded again, taking another sip of my tea. It was hard to look at her, with her celestial beauty. If this threat is so big, why don't you put a stop to it? I will not interfere in the lives of my children. The greatest gift I've given to all of you is free will. Even if some choose to use theirs distastefully. My eyebrows scrunched. But you made Hala, a new breed. Isn't that it you're referring? Celeste smiled an amused smile. I will admit, it's a grey area. A tiny loophole, if you will. She stood suddenly, smiling at me lovingly. You are more than you know, Violet. You will flourish, I am positive. Try not to worry about mundane things so much, and don't doubt yourself. You will make me proud, daughter, as you always have. Celeste walked to stand in front of me, cupping my cheeks lightly. Her skin was warm and cold, feathery light yet heavy. It was surreal, this feeling. When her lips touched my forehead, a jolt of light blinded me, before everything went dark. My eyes reopened to the darkness of the bedroom in the cabin, taking me totally by surprise. I shot up, my breathing coming hard, my heart accelerating so fast, I thought it might jump out of my chest. Jasper was awake instantly, his arms going around me. What? What's wrong? He asked frantically. I shook my head, trying to calm my dizzy thoughts. How could I even begin to explain to him what just happened? Violet? Vi. He shook me a little. You're scaring me. Tell me what's wrong, please. And nothing is wrong. I whispered. Whoa. Just give me a minute. He held me until my breathing slowed down, my heartbeat back to normal. Pushing my hair away from my face, I looked at him and explained. His eyes grew wider every second I talked, and when I finished, he looked almost as shaken as I had been a minute ago. So, your parents know what the goddess is talking about? About this threat? I guess so. He nodded, still looking stunned. At least we have a forewarning. My stomach felt uncomfortable as I thought about what Celeste said. I had a bad feeling throughout my body. How far away was this threat? When would it come? And why my family? I definitely needed answers. Throwing the covers off, I got out of bed and looked for my shoes. What are you doing? Jasper asked, but he got up as well. I can't just sit here, not knowing. I'm going to see my parents. He handed me my shoes. I grabbed my phone, and together we left. It was still dark out, but I guessed it was close to morning. Maybe another hour. Even if Mom wasn't up, Dad would be. He still got up at crazy hours, due to all the work he did as Alpha. Jasper waited inside the door while I stripped and shifted, picking up my belongings in my mouth. Before he followed suit, he put our phones in a bag so he could carry them. I turned while he shifted, and then we took off towards the pack house. I went over every single thing Celeste had told me in my head. Hala didn't have anything to add, and by the time we got to the pack house, I was even more anxious. Nobody was around when we arrived. I shifted back outside the house, throwing my clothes on. Jasper came around the front, handing me my phone. Shoving it in my pocket, he took my hand and we walked inside together. My dad should be up, but I want Mom there too. I looked at him. And Garrett? His eyes darkened a bit, but he nodded. I went to Dad's office first, not bothering to knock. He was sitting behind his desk, still looking tired. Violet? Jasper. We need to talk. I told him. He scrutinized my face. Something happened. Yes. Talk. I shook my head. Mom needs to be here too. And Garrett? He looked at me for a second. All right. Stay here. He stood and walked out. I pulled Jasper to the black sofa against the wall. I stared at the bookshelf on the other side of the room, waiting. It didn't take long. 10 minutes later, Mom, Dad and Garrett came in. I was shocked to see Sophia enter behind my brother. Did she stay in the pack house with him last night? Did that mean he'd accepted her? Garrett's eyes found my mate and he stiffened. Goddess knows why he thought I'd dragged them in here, but I didn't miss the anger that passed over his face. Without saying a word, he took Sophia's hand, leading her to the opposite side of the room. Mom took a seat next to me, and Dad resumed his place behind his desk. Everyone looked at me. Sorry to wake you up, I said to Mom and Garrett. But this is important. Don't worry, hun. Mom yawned. Just tell us what's going on. I looked her in the eye. I had a visit from Celeste. What? Celeste? The goddess. Everyone talked at once, except Sophia and Jasper. Though Sophia's eyes were wide as saucers. Well, more like she had me visit her. It's hard to explain. I groaned. Mom nodded. I know. Don't worry about that. What did she say? I told her everything. Her face grew paler by the second until she looked sick. So, I told you. Now, can you please explain what this threat is, and why it's coming for us? I asked, looking at her and Dad both. Dad hid his reaction better than Mom, but I could tell he was worried. I could see it in his eyes. Then his eyes glazed over, as well as Mom's. Irritation grew inside me until I couldn't take it anymore. Stop! I practically shouted. Mom jumped, her eyes clearing. We're not kids anymore. Just tell us what is going on, I demanded. Mom covered her face with her hands while Dad sighed. I looked at Garrett, who was looking between them both. You're keeping something from us. He spoke matter-of-factly. This threat, Mom said quietly, is not a what, but a who. Someone from our past. Dad added. Who? And why are they coming after us? I asked. Her name is Janine. Mom spat the word. I was hoping she was dead. After all this time. You're not answering why, Mom? She sighed hugely, finally looking up at me. Janine was your father's fling. Mistress, girlfriend, whatever you want to call it. She wasn't my girlfriend. Dad grumbled, but Mom silenced him with a look. They were together, up until I got here. But Janine didn't want to let go. She couldn't accept that your dad found his mate in someone who wasn't her. So, she tried to get rid of me. It didn't work out the way she expected. She told us the story, from start to finish. Only once, did she pause, stumbling over her words. My eyes narrowed, I knew she was hiding something else. An uneasy feeling spread through me as I listened. When she finished, I glared at her. You said she was turned into a witch? What happened to HR Wolf? I asked. Mom bit her lip. My jaw dropped and Garrett pushed away from the wall. She killed her wolf. He gasped. They didn't confirm it, but I knew. My stomach twisted painfully, as I grabbed Mom's arm, forcing her to look at me. Was that her? The wolf you gave a second chance to? Is it Hala? Yes. Hala whined loudly in my head. It was so loud, it drowned out the sob that came from Sophia. She didn't remember, but now she knew. Her human had killed her, tossed her away like nothing. Tears filled my eyes as my wolf cried painfully inside me. Violet's POV choking back a sob of my own, I leaned back against Jasper, who put his arms around me. This was unreal. Pathetic, really. This girl, Janine, was coming after us, all because Dad found his mate? How could one person hold on to so much hatred? Enough that they would kill their wolf, their other half. Hala was a part of me, I felt it. Not just in my mind, but a part of my soul. The thought of getting rid of her, it made me physically sick to my stomach. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you went through that. I told her solemnly. Perhaps it is better that I know. I am grateful I do not remember. But at least I know who to target. She was getting angry now, I could feel it. My hands were shaking, my vision blurry from my tears. Hala anger resonating through me, pulling me in. It was overwhelming. Crack! I jumped to my feet as Sophia shrieked. Garrett jumped in front of her in a protective stance. Jasper moved me behind him as well, and Mom and Dad were in immediate Alpha and Luna mode. I looked around for the sound of the noise, my eyes falling on the window behind Dad's desk and chair. My mouth fell open slightly. The entire window was cracked, delicate webs of lines crossing from one end to the other. All eyes turned to look that direction, and as we watched, tiny pieces began to fall onto the floor. And then bigger pieces until there was nothing left but a hole where the glass used to be. Dad stepped over them, crunching the glass under his shoes. He glanced out the window, surveying the area. There's nobody out there. He frowned. Are you sure? Mom asked. I'd hear them, and smell them. What on earth? He looked at the glass shards again, completely confused. It could have been a sniper. Mom said worriedly. She glanced between Garrett and I. But Dad shook his head, looking at the floor and the walls. There's no bullet. And I doubt she would use guns. Magic. Dad nodded. Nobody said anything for a couple minutes. I opened my mouth, but Garrett spoke first. So, when were you going to tell us? He looked angrily at our parents. Didn't you think this was something I should have known about? I'm going to be Alpha. Were you just never planning on telling me there was a threat to the pack? We didn't. Mom started. Violet was out all night. Garrett interrupted. So was I. We didn't even know we had a target on our backs. How could you be so careless? You aren't the target. Mom shouted. We are. How is that better, Mom? You didn't need to know. We will handle Janine. She said firmly. Like you did last time. He scoffed. Mom's aura radiated around the room powerfully, thickening the air. Lily, calm down. Dad said. But Mom ignored him completely. She glared at Garrett a minute more before turning and walking out, slamming the door behind her. I didn't like my brother talking to Mom like that, but I didn't say anything. I was angry as he was. They should have told us. Everything made more sense to me now: the intense training sessions, the strict curfews. Never being able to leave the pack. Having the warriors with us pretty much everywhere we went. I rounded on Dad, my own glare on my face. You should have told us. We didn't deserve to be kept in the dark. He sighed. I wanted to tell you, both. Many times. But your mother is totally overprotective. She needs to learn that we aren't helpless kids anymore. It only makes sense that Janine would go after Violet and Garrett, to hurt you too, Alpha. Sophia said quietly. I never would have taken Vi out if I'd known some pisco was on the loose. Jasper agreed. Dad observed all of us, one by one, before looking at the floor covered in glass again. His expression transformed into one of anger and determination. Then he was walking past us, his hand on the doorknob. I will speak to your mother. He looked at us over his shoulder. I am sorry we didn't tell you. But I won't let that hurt my family, not anymore. He opened the door, leaving to go after Mom. I fell back onto the sofa, mentally drained. What do we do now? I looked up at Garrett. We keep our eyes open, and watch our backs. And each other's backs. He told me firmly. He turned to Jasper, his anger coming back in his tone. I'm trusting you to watch over my sister. You don't need to worry about that. I'll always keep her safe. Jasper replied. Garrett nodded once, turning back to me. You know they won't let us help. Mom especially will try to keep us out of it. I smirked. I'd like to see her try. She's not the only one who has people to protect, people she loves. So, who's going to talk to her? I pursed my lips. Best 2 out of 3. Let's go. Sophia and Jasper both chuckled as we rock, paper, scissored. Sadly, and with a big groan, I ended up losing. Wearing my best grumpy face, I left the room, praying hard that a fight didn't break out between the guys in my absence. When I reached my parents' door, I paused. Crying could be heard through the door, and my heart clenched. Mom was super strict, sometimes she went overboard. But I knew it came from a place of love, and her wanting to protect us. I admired my mom more than anyone else. She was strong when she had to be, and she was one of the best fighters too, thanks to training with my dad for so many years. But she was also kind-hearted, warm, and caring. Often, it was difficult to believe the Luna of Blood Moon was anything more than a loving mother and wife. Enemies had underestimated her before, all to their demise. Mom? Dad? I pushed open the door quietly. What, Violet? Dad was sitting on their huge bed beside my mom, who was curled up on her side, her head on her pillow. Her face was tear-stained, her eyes puffy and red. I felt a rush of guilt, but not enough for me to let this go. Can I talk to you? I looked at Mom. Fine. She huffed after a minute. Dad sighed, running his hands through his hair. Giving her a quick kiss, he patted my shoulder on his way out. I took his place next to Mom. Mom. I said firmly, but gently. I know you want to protect us. I know. But do you really think Garrett and I are going to stand by while some hunts down our parents? Her eyes narrowed a bit at my language, but she didn't say anything. You can't keep us out of it. I continued. What was the point of training us then? Making sure we knew how to defend ourselves? There was no point if you're going to keep us locked up in the house. She pursed her lips. I kind of understand why you didn't tell us. I sighed. But at the same time, you also should have told us. And no matter what happens, we're doing this together, as a family. Or, we can do this by ourselves. But one way or another, Garrett and I will step up to protect you, Dad, and Blood Moon. Mom sat up, wiping her face. Then she took my hands in hers, our eyes meeting. Hers were filled with pain, anger, but most of all fear. Mine, on the other hand, were full of determination. After a long silence, she squeezed my hands and softly smiled. You are so like your father. She chuckled lowly. Always ready to jump into action. Even Garrett, though he's more cautious. I can't stand the thought of someone hurting you. Your dad made me realize that keeping this from you might have been a mistake all this time. But I should have known that you would never be the ones to hide away while someone was threatening us. No, that's not you. Especially you, Violet. You give me such a headache sometimes, but you always stand up to protect others, and for that, I couldn't be prouder. We will do this together. Even if I'm hesitant about it. She pulled me in for an unexpected hug, burying her face in my hair. Her words took me by surprise a bit, but they warmed my heart too. I was just happy I wouldn't have to fight her on this anymore. We pulled back, smiling at each other. Love you, Mom. I love you too, Vi. Come on, let's go back. Your dad is getting Luke and Ben too. I nodded, pulling her up with me. We made our way back to Dad's office, both lost in our thoughts. Not surprisingly, Uncle Luke and Ben were already there, Ben crouching down near the broken window shards while Luke was glaring at the wall. Everyone looked up when we entered, and I went straight to Jasper. He wrapped his arm around my shoulder, and we resumed our seat on the sofa, Mom sitting next to me. So? Garrett asked. We're good. I said. Garrett, I'm sorry. Mom said to him. Me too. They hugged briefly, Garrett bending down to wrap his arms around her. What's the plan? Uncle Luke asked. I have the warriors already searching the area. Border patrol on every side said nobody got in, but I don't know. She could have slipped by with a spell or something. Where's Clara? Dad looked at Ben, who stood up, shaking his head. Coming. Should be any minute now. The door opened as his words ended, and Clara walking in. She surveyed the room, and our serious faces before looking at her mate. What's going on? Janine. Aunt Clara's face darkened, her eyes sparking. Her fingers twitched, as if just the name of the enemy was making her want to hit something. She's back. She hissed. Looks like it. Uncle Ben glared at the glass. Aunt Clara walked over, frowning at the mess. Can you use a locator spell? Dad asked. There's no way this was done with a gun, and there's no bullet. It had to have been her. Aunt Clara's head suddenly seeked to the side. She examined the window closely, her heels crunching some of the pieces under her feet. Ben, stand back. He did as she asked, backing up to the wall. Aunt Clara stood back as well, muttering under breath and waving her hand over the glass. After a couple seconds, they started to float in the air. I watched in awe as one by one, each piece of glass flew back up to the windowsill and reassembled itself. Aunt Clara was watching too, her eyes following each shard, her frown becoming more and more pronounced. When the window was finally back in place, only the original spiderweb cracks were left, before it fell. It doesn't make any sense, she said. What doesn't? Uncle Luke asked. The window. It was broken from the inside. What? Mom gasped. Are you sure? Uncle Ben asked. Aunt Clara nodded. Positive. This was done from inside this room. Impossible. Janine couldn't have gotten into the pack house, let alone up here, without being seen. Uncle Luke said. I don't think Janine did this. Aunt Clara looked around at us. No, this was done by someone here. Someone here has magic in their blood. Violet's POV. Everyone stared at her. Nobody said anything for a whole minute, but it was clear she was serious. Briefly, I glanced around. Obviously, none of the adults here had magic, even though Mom's dad was a witch, she had been born a werewolf. Garrett and myself were obviously wolves too, we had shifted after all. However, Aunt Clara's eyes landed on me and I paled, holding my hands up. It can't be me! I exclaimed. I'm a werewolf, not a witch. But you're a new wolf. Mom mused. We haven't talked about that yet, but now seems like an appropriate time. I shook my head in denial. No, Hala would have said something. She would have known. I said firmly. I knew I was a mother wolf, but she never told me. Not until we shifted. Mom told me. Everyone was staring at me, and I grew uncomfortable. Hala. I called desperately for my wolf. Tell me they're wrong. It wasn't us. She didn't answer me in words, but I felt her hesitation in my mind. That was the only answer I needed. No. I denied it again. Calm down. You knew. You knew and you didn't tell me. Sorry. Why? There are things you need to discover for yourself first. That's such a BT answer. Why are you wolves so secretive? Perhaps it's in our nature. Aunt Clara clicked her tongue, eyeing me. I think it's safe to say we have our answer, judging by the look on your face, Violet. What did Hala say? Mom asked beside me. Nothing helpful. I groaned. Seriously, calm down. So you're a hybrid, that's not a bad thing. I'm, what? You are half wolf, half witch. That's not even possible. I screamed in my mind. In my frenzied state, I hadn't realized I'd also shouted the words aloud. Mom and Jasper both jumped beside me. What's not possible? Uncle Luke asked. Hala says, she said. I struggled to get the words out. That I'm a hybrid. Half wolf and half witch. Every pair of eyes in the room widened, along with jaws dropping to the floor. I looked at each of my family's face, hoping someone would tell me my wolf was crazy. This had to be a joke, and it wasn't even a good one. Impossible. Uncle Luke was the first one to break the silence. Hybrids don't exist, not anymore. Everyone knows that. Pretty sure we exist. Hala scoffed. Hang on. Jasper spoke for the first time in a while. Can someone explain this to me? Don't they teach this in school? Aunt Clara asked. It's help when you actually pay attention in class. Garrett said. Jasper frowned at him. Thankfully, Uncle Luke spoke before they could start bickering. A hybrid is pretty easy to explain. Half of one thing, half of another. Jasper nodded and he continued. However, there hasn't been a hybrid in centuries. Actually, close to 700 years now. Before that though, they were quite common, or at least that's what all the books say. What happened to them? They were executed. Aunt Clara took over. Every story tells us that they grew too powerful, they got greedy, trying to exterminate other species, wipe them out. They thought of themselves as the dominant species. Utter chaos broke out, a complete blood show. A few species were wiped out, the fairies, the dragons. Humans found a way to survive, somehow, wolves, witches, and vampires too. The stories say the four species left teamed up, working together to get rid of the hybrids once and for all. After the carnage, all species went their separate ways, for fear of more hybrids being born. It soon became forbidden to mate with other species because of that fear, even if you found your true mate. It seemed the goddess herself agreed too. Any child born of mixed blood would either take after the mother or father, but never both again. Until now. Uncle Ben muttered, but everyone heard him. So why create one now? Jasper asked. If hybrids were feared so much. Aunt Clara shrugged. Who knows? Celeste also brought back the mother wolf in Lily. They all started to speculate, talking hypotheticals and theories. I couldn't concentrate on that though, focusing on my mate beside me. His eyebrows were furrowed, a slight but poignant frown on his face. He wouldn't meet my eyes. My stomach twisted. Is this a problem? I asked him bluntly. Around me, my family stopped talking. Jasper finally looked at me. It's unexpected. He replied. A hard, unamused laugh left my mouth. No. Violet. Mom touched my shoulder, but I shook her off. I was filled with irrational waves of anger towards my mate. Part of me knew it was just the shock, but I couldn't seem to stop it. I glared at him, moving away when he also tried to touch me. You think this is just a shock for you? I nearly shouted at him. Do you even care how I feel right now? Or are you trying to figure out the best way to reject me? Jasper seemed genuinely hurt by my words. Before he could answer, I was on my feet. Say it, Jasper. Say the words. You're mated to a freak. He stood up too, reaching for me, but I was too far gone. Tears were pouring down my face. I ran out of the room, sobbing. I really thought I could make it work with him. I really did. Violet. Come back. Violet. I heard them calling after me, possibly even following me, but I didn't care. I kept running. Violet. You need to calm down. Hala shouted. I barely heard her. The same scenario kept playing in my head, over and over. My family, turning away from me. My mate, rejecting me. The monster. I was a monster. People like me were exterminated, for good reason. I wasn't supposed to exist. How could anyone look at me the same way now? They wouldn't, I knew that. My tears blinded me as I sprinted down the stairs, broken, gasping sobs vibrating in my chest. I was feeling too many things at once, and none of them were positive. I felt a pressure somewhere inside me, but I was too overwhelmed to focus on where. It was a forbidden feeling, and I started to panic on top of everything else. Violet. Listen to me please. No. Please, stop. Go back to Jasper, let our mates calm you down. He doesn't want me. Who could want me now? Violet. Stop. Stow. Hala's desperate plea was silenced as my panic finally overwhelmed me. I had been barely breathing, on the verge of probably passing out when the pressure inside me suddenly burst free. I stumbled as a huge aura surrounded me. It took me a 5 full seconds to realize it was mine. It shot out, like it was its very own life force, invisible but strong. There was 1 second of silence. And then the stairs under me started creaking loudly. I watched in horror as the steps above me and below me cracked, snapped. As if someone was breaking them apart with a sledgehammer. I grabbed onto the railing, stunned to see the walls were shaking as well. This only added to my anxiety. A huge crash sounded, the stairs were giving way. Not only the stairs, but parts of the wall too. Anything they were attached to started to fall, crumbling like paper. Instinct took over, and I surged forward, trying to place my feet in the least dangerous spots. Screams echoed around me, and shouts, but I focused on my task. Reaching the last flight, I risked it, jumping. I landed in the foyer, rolling to absorb the impact. Taking deep breaths, I watched as the last of the stairs fell into a huge pile of wood and plaster. Fresh tears started rolling down my cheeks. What had I just done? By the goddess! Dazed, I turned to see a group of maids. All of them were staring at the wreckage in horror, until one noticed me. Oh! My dear, are you all right? Were you on the stairs? Are you all right? Are you hurt anywhere? Another asked me. I am fine. I managed to choke out. Half the house has come down. I heard one say. Was that an earthquake? I hope the rest of the pack is all right. Shaking, I got to my feet. The entire foyer was a mess. A thick cloud was floating just above the ground from all the dust. The decorative tables my dad owned were broken, and various paintings on the walls were also now on the floor, some buried. Daylight was shining through a gigantic hole in the outer wall that had come down the stairs. The more I looked around, the more damage I saw. Worse, I'd trapped everyone upstairs. How were they supposed to get down? My guts knotted as I silently hoped nobody had been on the stairs with me. Alpha? Luna? I jerked my head up. One of the maids was carefully picked her way across the rubble, looking up. Alpha, Luna, are you all right? She called. We're here, we're fine. Mom's voice came from above. I could also hear someone coughing. Is Violet there? Is she okay? The maid and I locked eyes for a second before she lifted her head again. She's here, Luna. She's okay. Get back a ways. I'm going to shift and jump down. Mom called. I backed up to the door, grabbing the handle. If anyone could make that jump, it was my mom's wolf. Still, I didn't want to be here when she got down. I wasn't afraid of getting in trouble, I was afraid of hurting her. I'd single-handedly brought down a huge portion of the pack house, obviously it wasn't safe for me to be around people right now. I slipped out the door while the group of maids and even some warriors who'd been in the cafeteria were making room for Aya, breaking into a run again. I thought about going to the cabin, but I didn't exactly remember the way, and I didn't want to get lost either. I passed the first trees and immediately shifted, not even caring about the clothes I'd just destroyed. Are you okay? Hala asked gently. Just run, Hala. I gave her control, retreating to the back of my mind. I didn't care where she took us, as long as it was away from the pack house. Away from the people I'd almost hurt. It was nothing short of a miracle that nobody had gotten hurt actually. It wasn't your fault. My wolf tried again. Yes, it was. You are not the first witch to Hala, please. Are you ashamed of what you are? Of what we are? How could I not be? If I was just a witch or just a wolf, everything would be fine. I could have killed someone, Hala. Do you not get that? She didn't answer me, for which I was glad. I didn't feel like arguing with her, she was just as stubborn as I was. Instead, she ran through the forest, taking us further from the people I was now too scared to face. Jasper's POV: I stood by the stairs, or what used to be the stairs, feeling like a complete jackass. Why had I said that to Violet? Could I possibly have said anything stupider? I didn't give a DN if she a hybrid, I didn't give a DN if she turned out to be part witch, part wolf, part troll. As long as she was safe. Glaring down at the mess below me, I had no idea if Vi was safe. I could feel her through our bond, strangely, but she was already far away, far from the pack house. Briefly, I stopped to wonder why I could feel her so strongly. Our bond was still brand new, it shouldn't be this strong yet. Mom says we should be able to get down in a minute or so. I was pulled out of my thoughts by Garrett behind me. He was visibly unhappy. Good. I need to find. Haven't you done enough already? He cut me off. I glared at him. Don't start, Garrett. I growled. Or what? He scoffed. You're the reason Vi got so upset. Enough, Garrett. Alpha Dimitri came up behind us, giving his son a stern look. Violet was upset about a lot of things today, she just happened to focus her feelings on the wrong person. Jasper didn't do anything wrong. Seriously? Garrett argued. Perhaps it wasn't the best choice of words, but she was already on the verge on being overwhelmed by everything. She's been dealing with a lot of stress since the shift. Alpha Dimitri eyed him meaningfully, and Garrett hung his head a bit. Are you guys ready? Luna Lily called up to us. I never really thought about how high the Alpha's floor was, I'd never been here after all. I knew the pack house itself was very large, but looking down at the Luna now, who looked like a child from this height, was rather unnerving. We're ready when you are. Alpha Dimitri called back. How exactly does she plan to get us down? I asked curiously. And why can't Aunt Clara do this? Garrett added. Because Clara spoke up behind us, I have no idea how to judge the fall. In case you didn't notice, Garrett, I'm not Harry Potter, and levitation spells aren't my speciality. I'd probably end up dropping you before you were halfway down. Good to know. He muttered. They stopped bickering as a soft bark reached our ears. Suddenly, Alpha Dimitri stepped forward, breaking off the edge of the hall that the stairs were once connected to. Alpha. Dad. Oh my goddess! Sophia, Garrett, and I all rushed forward, positive we would see our Alpha splat on the wreck below. We caught the last of his fall, right into Luna Lily's wolf's mouth. Sophia went pale, her mate not looking much better. I watched, but it didn't seem like the Alpha was hurt. The Luna's wolf disappeared for a second, then appeared again looking up at us. Next. Beta Ben stepped up, stepping up. I backed up as he walked off the edge as casually as the Alpha before him had. Next was his mate, telling us not to be such babies before she fell. The three of us remaining looked at each other, unwilling. After a few minutes, and a couple barks from below, Garrett groaned. She better freaking catch me, or I swear. He closed his eyes tightly. His step wasn't as casual though, in fact, it seemed like he tried to step back at the last second, but he was already falling. Sophia and I looked over, making sure he made it. She let out a sigh of relief beside me when his mom caught him with ease. That relief didn't last long though. Oh goddess! I can't do this! I can't! I'm terrified of heights! Oh goddess, just leave me here! Sophia rambled. Her face was going from white to green. Unless you sprout wings, this is their only way down. I pointed out. Why did it have to be the stairs? Why couldn't she have destroyed a tree or something? She kept rambling. Sophia. Garrett's voice drifted up to us. Just focus on Garrett. I told her. I knew if I went first, she'd never jump. I had to get her down first. No, 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 no. She squealed as I led her to the drop. Close your eyes. Don't think about it, think about him. She was a sickly color by now, but she took a deep breath, squeezing her eyes shut. The girl was shaking like a leaf, and when she put her foot into open air, a terrified shriek left her lips. Regardless, she let her drop. I watched her fall, my ears ringing at the scream she let out the whole way down. It cut off when the Luna caught her. When the wolf's eyes were back on me, I also took a few deep breaths. I wasn't a particular fan of heights either, but I could do this. Gathering myself, I stepped off. The fall was actually rather short. The scary part was seeing the Luna's oversized teeth coming closer and closer until, with a grunt, she caught me as gently as possible. Stepping down from the rubble, she set me on my feet with the others. Well, most of the others, Sophia and Garrett, were just outside the door, Sophia getting sick into the bushes that lined the front steps. The Luna joined us, now back in human form and clothed. I'm going to find Vi, I announced, turning for the door. Hang on. Luna Lily put a hand on my shoulder, stopping me. We need to talk about this. This. Her being a. She trailed off, eyeing the maids around us who were attempting to clean the huge mess. You know. I shook my head. I'm not talking behind her back. No offense, Luna. He's right, Lily. Alpha Dimitri said. Let him bring her back first, then we can discuss the situation. Still, she didn't let me go. Instead, she looked into my eyes, and a shiver ran down my spine at the fierceness I saw. She looked every bit a Luna DN mother right now. Are you going to reject my daughter? She half whispered. No. I deadpanned. I'm sorry that I gave that impression. I don't care what Violet is. She's my mate and I will accept her no matter what. I'm only worried about right now. She held on to me a while longer, before nodding, believing I was serious. Go find her. Nodding, I gave her and the Alpha a respectful nod before leaving. I ignored Garrett and his mate, going straight for the woods at the back of the pack house. The only thing that caught my eye was the damage. Even on the outside, it was impressive. My heart clenched. Vi must have been really upset to cause this. I starting stripping before I even hit the trees. Giving control over to my wolf, I shifted, and started running. Her scent was easy enough to follow, even more so in this form. Her trail led mostly in a straight line. Obviously, she hadn't cared about where she went, as long as she could get away. Enno whined, eager to find our mates. Don't worry, we'll find them. I assured him. I know. I hate that they are upset though. Me too. You need to think before you speak. He growled. I'll definitely work on it. I promised. We ran for over an hour. Did Violet cross the border? I really hoped not. Who knew where that Piscogenine was? Not to mention rogues. However, her trail turned left about 20 minutes from the border, to my relief. Enno pushed himself faster, jumping and twisting around trees. When he started to slow down, I took back control, much to his annoyance. Making my way at a fast jog, I looked around for any sign of her, until, finally, I caught sight of her. She wasn't in wolf form anymore, but sitting on the bank of one of the pack's waterfalls. She was wearing a green dress. I guessed she found it in one of the many stashes of clothes hidden in the woods. Even from here, I could tell she was still upset, her knees drawn up with her chin resting on them. Her arms hugged her legs as she stared unblinking at the scenery. Quickly, I sniffed out the clothing stash, shifting back. All I could find was a pair of jeans in my size, but every shirt was too small. Whatever. Tracing my steps, I stepped out of the shadows, hesitantly approaching her. She didn't even seem to notice I was here. Vi. I called her name softly. What do you want, Jasper? She asked. Her voice sounded a bit rough from the crying. So she did know I was here. I came to find you. The waterfall crashed into the water below, almost drowning out my reply. I'd never been to this spot before. Blood Moon had various waterfalls like this one. Usually, kids and teenagers flocked to the bigger ones for bonfires or parties. The biggest one was used for pack parties sometimes. I remembered the twins had their 16th birthday party there. Comparatively, this waterfall was significantly smaller, but somehow, I liked it better. It was more secluded, with no traces of past get-togethers. As if it had been untouched, always. There was something pure about it, and it was still beautiful. I'll admit, it's a nice place to be rejected. Violet's words pulled my attention back to her. Silent tears ran down her cheeks. I sat beside her on the ground, taking her face in my hands and wiping them. I couldn't stand to see her in so much pain. I'm not rejecting you, I told her firmly. Our eyes met. Neither of us spoke for a while, our breathing overshadowed by the noise of the water behind us. Eventually, she whispered one word, so low I had to read her lips to catch it. Why? I half smiled. I'm sorry I upset you earlier, that wasn't what I wanted. Yes, I was shocked to discover what you were. But Vi, it doesn't matter to me what you are. To me, you will always be the girl who punched a kid over one of my drawings. The girl who stuck up for her best friend when she was getting bullied. The girl who snuck out, the troublemaker who also has a kind heart and a good soul. A good person. You're the girl I've watched for years, the girl I grew more attracted to every day. The girl with the attitude, and a temper, but who will also help anyone she can, simply just because she can. You're my girl, Violet, always. You could have a third arm and 6 eyes and I would still want you. Her bottom lip was quivering. I couldn't remember ever seeing Violet cry this much. Actually, I couldn't remember seeing her ever cry at all. It hurt worse that this was because of me, that I'd been the one to upset her. Gently, I pulled her onto my lap, wrapping my arms around her in a tight hug. She cried into my chest, the tears dropping onto my skin and sliding down. I kissed the top of her head. To me, you will always be just Violet. Not Violet the hybrid, that's just another part of who you are. But that doesn't mean that's all you are. I told her. The dam broke, a fresh torrent of tears and sobs erupting from her. I held her gently, but firmly, occasionally whispering reassurances in her ear, not even sure she was listening to me. Her cries echoed around us, mixing with the roar of the waterfall. Eno was whining, pacing in my head, but I tried to just focus on her. After a long while, Vi's tears ran dry, her sobs turning into little hiccups. Resting her cheek against my chest, I waited until her breathing evened out. Better? I asked her. Yes. She sniffed. Thank you. Thank you for coming to find me. Always. I could feel her fidgeting with her fingers. When she looked up, she was biting her lip. "Did you mean it? What you said?" she whispered. I cupped her cheek, leaving one arm around her. "Every word. What if I'm dangerous? What if I can't control it? Then we will deal with that together." Something in her eyes changed, the worry dissipated almost completely. Taking my face in her small hands, Violet leaned in and kissed me. I answered her kiss eagerly, feeling an intense amount of relief. This time felt different than before. The sparks were definitely there, but there was more under that. A new level of mutual trust, of understanding. And a passion that wasn't there before too. Violet kissed me like I was the air she needed to breathe, and I was quickly getting lost in her. Her hands went to the back of my neck, playing with the hair there. I shivered under her touch, the first time I'd ever been so affected by a woman's touch. I tugged her closer, our chests pressing against each other. My hand was splayed back into her hair, securing her to me. My other arm was holding her against me, unwilling to ever let go of her, of this moment. Too soon though, we both ran out of breath, forcing us to part. I rested my forehead against hers, our noses brushing. "Home," I whispered. "Yet. I need to talk to my parents." Standing up, I set her on her feet, reaching down to take her hand. "Let's go." Jasper's POV: we got back to the pack house later than expected, due the fact that we hadn't shifted. I was fine with that, just enjoying being with her for a while. We didn't talk much on the way back, but I caught her biting her lip a lot. Clearly, she was still very worried about the revelation of her being a hybrid, and what her future would hold. I'd squeeze her hand, a reminder that I was here for her, and she'd gift me with a small smile. Now, her face fell into a grimace as she properly looked at the damage of the pack house. "Mom and Dad must be so annoyed," she groaned. "I think they're more relieved that you weren't hurt. Nobody else got hurt, did they?" She looked up at me with worried eyes. "No, everyone is fine. Thank the goddess." Her gaze fell back on the broken wall, the sound of people from inside reaching our ears. "I can't believe I did that." "Me either. Now I really have to be careful not to get on your bad side," I teased her. Thankfully, my lame joke had the effect I wanted. Vi punched my arm lightly, but she was smiling. "Violet." We turned simultaneously at the Luna's voice. She was running in our direction and Violet let go of my hand, taking 2 steps back, looking afraid. Her mom jumped, nearly tackling her to the ground in the process. "Oh my goddess, I was so worried about you!" Luna Lily exclaimed. "W worried?" Violet repeated. "Of course." She checked her daughter all over, patting her cheeks, her arms. "Are you hurt anywhere?" "I'm fine, Mom." Violet's voice was just above a whisper, obviously stunned by this greeting. "You sure?" "All right. Come on, we have lots to talk about." Taking my place next to her, the Luna led us inside. To my surprise, the people in the house had done a fast job at clearing away the damage. A third of it was gone already. Vi kept her eyes down as we passed through the foyer and down the hall leading to the cafeteria. The doors opened and once again, we were received with frantic activity. Everyone rushed to Violet, asking if she was okay. She gave me a look, and I smiled at her. No matter what, her family would always be there for her, just like me. Once it was relatively calm, and we were seated at one of the tables, Violet turned to her dad. "Dad, I'm sorry. I know it'll cost a lot to repair the damage. I'll help though, I swear. Don't worry about it. I already put in a request for new stairs to Mibui no, shouted the Luna. She was glaring at her mate across the table. For the love of the goddess Dimitri, just put in the elevator. I swear, if you rebuild those stairs, I will be the next one to rip them down. Hear, hear! Exclaimed Luke, and Ben nodded in agreement. Seriously, I'll help her. Clara added. Finally. Sighed Garrett. Thanks sis. No problem. Violet mumbled. However, even she had a tiny smile. I can't just put in one elevator. Alpha Dimitri said to his Luna. It'll be too much for everyone here. Then put in 2. Or 3. I really don't care, but no more stairs. She replied. Alpha Dimitri sighed heavily, rubbing his face. I got the feeling this wasn't the first conversation on this topic, but it seemed to be the last. He conceded with poor grace, looking like he lost a war. Everyone was visibly very happy about this decision. All right. Moving on. The Alpha said. He turned to his daughter, who shrank a little into my side. I'm sorry. She whispered. Honey, nobody is mad. This wasn't your fault. Luna Lily said. Your grandpa and I have agreed to work with you, to help you control your witch blood. Clara spoke up. Really? Violet sat up a bit. Clara nodded. ISA went through this. So did I, and probably your grandpa too. Your power is coming forth, and it's unstable right now. It will come out in waves when you get too emotional. She glanced towards the doors. Though I can't say I've ever heard of a witch bringing down a house. It wasn't the whole house. Vi grumbled. Regardless, you're obviously very powerful. You just need to learn to control it. Violet looked around, gazing at each of our faces. What if I can't? She asked. Her dad took her hand, giving it a squeeze. Then we figure it out. We will not turn our backs on you. She looked like she was going to cry again, but held it in. Instead, she leaned in, hugging her dad tightly. Thanks. She said, looking at everyone in turn. I'm afraid you'll have to stay home from school for a while. But you can do everything online so you won't fall behind. Her mom said. Okay. Your grandpa and I want to start training you as soon as possible. So be ready tomorrow, and meet us in the training yard after lunch. You can do school until then. Clara said. Tomorrow. We can't risk any more, incidents. I love renovating, but I'm not up for rebuilding the whole house. Her mom chuckled and Violet blushed. Everyone will need to go to the second floor tonight, until the elevators are put in. Alpha Dimitri said. He pouted a little towards the Luna, but she studiously ignored him. And how do you suggest we get to the second floor? Luke raised an eyebrow. Ever heard of a ladder? Alpha Dimitri threw back. Luke muttered while Ben laughed. Lastly, I want this to be kept under wraps for now. Nobody is to speak of this to anyone outside of this room. Understood. The Alpha looked around, all of us nodding. Good. Then we need a training spot other than the yard. Clara said. How about the cabin? I suggested. What cabin? I have a cabin just outside the border. It's private enough. Jasper no. Violet shook her head. I don't want to risk damaging that place, you worked so hard to restore it. It's fine Vi. Really, I don't mind. Besides, it's the safer option, for you. She frowned, but her aunt liked the idea. I agreed to take them there tomorrow, and it was settled. Despite her concerns, Violet fell into conversation with her aunt and mom about her new training. The other broke off into different conversations as well, and I was left to just listen. The men were discussing how to locate Janine, and I focused on that. But I felt an itch, as if I was being watched. My eyes cut down the table, and sure enough, Garrett was glaring at me. What was with him? Was he ever going to let go of his anger towards me? I wasn't the only one who noticed. Sophia touched his arm, making him focus on her. She spoke quietly to him for a minute and they stood. "We're going to bed," he announced. "Your room is the third on the left," the alpha said, and Garrett nodded. They said good night to everyone, but Garrett threw me one last look before they left. It was easy to ignore him though, when I had my mate to focus on. She was listening avidly to her dad and uncles now. "We've searched this whole area, many times." Killian expanded with his men, "Remember, but she's not here." "Do you think she went back to Scotland?" Luke asked. "Doubtful. She has to know we'd check there eventually." "Violet." Her dad turned to her, surprised to see she was already involved in the topic at hand. "Did Celeste say anything else? About where Janine was?" "No. She just said danger was coming, but she didn't give any details. I didn't even know who she was talking about until you guys told us." He ran his hands through his hair. "Okay. Well, we have a warning. So she must be getting ready to make a move soon. Ben, send the search parties out again. She might be back in the area now." "What about me?" Luke looked at him. "You have another job. Gideon and Clara will be busy training Violet, Ben with the searches, and I want you to see what you can find on hybrids. In the library, from our allies, anything." I raised my eyebrows, but the Gamma just nodded. I got the impression he was very knowledgeable, and he didn't complain about his assignment either. "All right. I think everyone could use some rest now." We stood, but I might have been the only one at a loss. Was I supposed to go home? Could I stay with Violet? As I was pondering this, Luna Lily came over to us. "Your room is second on the right. I had some clothes delivered for you, Jasper." "Thanks, Mom." "Thank you, Luna." I bowed my head. "Please, call me Lily dear. You are my future son-in-law after all, no need for such formalities." Okay. Lily." Both girls chuckled at how awkward I sounded. "Have a good night." She hugged her daughter again, kissing her on the cheek before she left side by side with her alpha. "I think Mom is already planning our wedding," Violet said. "Seems like it." I agreed. "Oh well. One less thing we have to do. Doesn't every girl want to plan their own wedding?" "Most girls, I guess. I never really thought about it much." She shrugged. "Yeah, that sounds like you." I smiled and she blushed lightly. "Do you want me to stay here tonight?" "Yes." I chuckled at how quickly she answered. I mind-linked my mom, telling her where I was, and then we left. It felt like morning was only minutes ago, but in reality, the koas from earlier, plus finding and bring back Vi, had taken up my whole day. It was already dark outside, though I had no idea what time it actually was. Violet was clearly exhausted though. The foyer was almost completely cleared now, only a few spare wood chunks lying on the floor. As mentioned, a ladder was placed against the wall, leading up to the second floor. Violet climbed up first and I followed. "I'm going to take a shower," she said once the door to the room closed. "Make yourself at home." "Will do." I plopped onto the bed, grateful that it was soft and comfy while she disappeared behind a door. A few minutes later, I heard the shower running. As if on cue, No got excited, throwing out all sorts of images in our shared mind. I groaned. "Can you not? I want to mark our mate." He growled. "She's had a day, man. Can't you be a normal, non-horny wolf for once?" "Not really. You're impossible." Of course, now my own imagination was running wild. Twice, I readjusted myself, to no real satisfaction. Violet's scent was drifting into the room, floating on the steam from the shower coming from under the door. I inhaled deeply, relaxing and getting more excited by her heavenly scent. I'd never smelled anything quite so intoxicating. It only made me wonder if she tasted just as good. I was so lost in my own world, I didn't notice the shower had stopped running. I only shot up when the door opened, Violet shyly stepping into the room in nothing but a towel. I gulped loudly, my eyes following her as she walked to a large dresser, pulling out some pajamas. Neither of us said a word, and she avoided looking directly at me, but the air was thick around us. I released the breath I'd been holding when the bathroom door shut again. However, I nearly choked on it when she came back out. She was wearing a purple set, the top showing off her cleavage beautifully, while the shorts were, well, short. I drank in the sight, wondering how I was going to make it through the night without going crazy. Meanwhile, Violet stood in front of a mirror on the wall above the dresser, brushing her wet hair. Her scent was stronger now, and it was a miracle of willpower I hadn't moved from the bed yet. "Which side of the bed do you want?" Her eyes found mine in the mirror. "Doesn't matter." I hoped my voice was as casual as I wanted it to be. Finally, she turned out the lights, and joined me. Her expression said she was trying to act natural, maybe even pretend I wasn't here. But her nervousness was easy to spot. I pulled the covers back, then tucked them around her. I laid down, wondering if it would be okay, or too far, to be closer to her. Before I came up with an answer, Violet rolled over, facing me. "Can I?" She gestured to the space between us. I nodded. A big part of me wondered why this was such a big deal. We already slept in the same bed. So why did this feel different? We were both acting more cautious, obviously timid. Sparks danced across my skin as she laid down right beside me, her arm over my torso while my arms were behind my head. "Good night," she whispered. "Night." I kissed her hair. In minutes, her breathing evened out. A soft snore came from the back of her throat. She really was just done today. I, on the other hand, was wide awake. Lowering one arm, I started to play with her long hair, brushing it over her shoulder. The action calmed me a lot, and I sent a heartfelt thank you to the goddess for giving me the girl beside me. The rest of the audiobooks will be uploaded in the next episode. Join us on Patreon to listen to more unlimited audiobooks.